Hi, this is Billy Hayes. You are watching the whole podcast with Rob Sprance, Lori Levine, and I'm going to have a chance to talk with them today.
Welcome to the Hole. I am Rob Sprance.
And I'm Lori Levine.
And I'm still Billy Hayes.
We are joined by Billy Hayes, who I have said many times on the show, whether Billy was in front of me or not, that Billy, his story and his appearance on our show was to me one of the greatest episodes that we've done. And it was all Billy. Like I just sat there and nodded, frankly. I mean, but, you know,
I'm honored.
Well, thank you. But I wanted to have you back on for a couple of reasons. Number one, you have a new book, Midnight Express Epilogue, which you have just released. Now, this is your third in that Midnight Express world, so to speak, where I know, of course, for those of you who don't know, there was a huge film in the 70s called Midnight Express, written by Oliver Stone, quote unquote, which was really written by Billy because Billy wrote the book, which is the story of what really happened to Billy. And we're going to get into all the details of it, but in a summary, really quick, Billy was arrested for smuggling hashish out of Turkey, and he was put in a Turkish prison. That is all I need to say. Billy will explain it way, way, way better than I could. But he's got a new book as well, and this book is very cool in a way, Billy, because it seems like, I don't know, have you kept journals all the time? Because it does seem like these are the events after you went back to Turkey, and this is you learn a lot more about your life, and that it's not all about, while this one moment has defined you,
Right.
and who you are, and you've embraced that and have done so much with that. At the same time, there's a lot more to life than just what happened, and you find a lot of that as well in this book. So I can't recommend it enough, and you're an excellent writer as well.
Thank you so much.
So let's go back. Let's go back to the time that this happened. Now you're in your 20s. This is the late 1960s we're looking at around this time.
1969, April of 1969, I had a really good idea, which was to smuggle 2 kilos of hashish out of Istanbul.
Mhm.
And seemed like a good idea at the time. It actually worked. I made 3 successful hash smuggling trips. April of 69, October of 69, April of 1970, and then one trip too many, which was October of 1970, when I was arrested at the airport in Istanbul, originally sentenced to 4 years and 2 months of prison, and then, which seemed like forever to me, and of course it was when you're 22 years old, sentenced to 4 years in jail. I made several unsuccessful escape attempts, and then my best friend came to help me escape, and he was killed in the process. And that sort of turned things around for me. And I realized, I've just fucked up my own life. My parents are suffering. My mom goes to sleep every night with pain in her heart for what I've done. Jesus, 50 years later, I can still barely say that. And now my best friend is dead. So I decided I'm finished. I'm going to spend the rest of my time here. When I turned the escape switch off, everything changed. Prison became a different place. I was seeing it with different eyes. I was thoroughly into my yoga at that point. I've been doing it every day for a couple of years. And I just found living day to day, moment to moment, allowed me to change my attitudes towards what I'm doing. Like, I'm in jail, I have to get out, and all that crazy stuff. It's no, I happen to be in jail, but I'm also alive and I'm healthy. And I have people who love me, and I've learned things that I needed to learn now in prison. And it's time to go. Of course, after a year, I thought, well, now I've learned a lot. Now it's my time to go.
Yeah.
And then 2 years, and then 3 years, and then when I turned the switch off, I had like a little less than 2 years to go, and I was counting the days. I was doing my yoga. I was as mellow as I can be in jail, and I was counting out the days. I had a calendar, 56, 55, 54 days prior to going free. The High Court in Ankara, a lot of politics involved. Richard Nixon, the war on drugs. They were wanting Turkey and other countries who received aid from the U.S., which was everyone back then, well, still probably, to increase their drug penalties. The war on drugs was starting. Richard Nixon. I hated Richard Nixon. And what Turkey did was they decided they're going to show the world, especially the U.S., that they are enforcing their drug penalties. And people like myself, and unfortunately a couple of American women, another guy after me, all got their sentences increased. So instead of going free in 54 days, I'm looking at a new trial, and I've already been informed I will be sentenced to life.
Yeah. So
that changed things. All that hard-earned and hard-won mellowness that I've learned through my yoga and my meditation was sorely tested, because now I'm looking at the rest of my life in jail, and obviously I can't do that.
Yeah, and you probably get just a rush of just through your body of just absolute panic, because here you are with this target date, which is 54 days away, or even when you started, it was 4 years 2 months, I believe, right? Was the sentence, right? So you're looking at that 4 years and 2 months, which when it first happens seems like an eternity, but as time goes on, okay, I can do this, and then they come in and just pull that rug from under you. And I mean, I can't even imagine what that moment must have felt like.
Well, and you're thinking about all the things you're gonna have, like you're gonna have sushi or pizza, and
I was out, Lori. I was out. I was thinking about my mom. I was thinking about life and women, and just being free, just being able to walk outside at night. Because in prison during the day, you get out of the cell block. Sometimes you go to court, you look out the window of the van and you can see light, but you're never out at night. And I so missed just being outside in the darkness. And I was looking forward to all of that. Excuse me. And to see my family, to see my mom again. Excuse me, something in my throat here. And all of that suddenly went away. And now I'm looking at the rest of my life in jail. So the escape switch slammed back on. It took me another 18 months to get transferred to İmralı Island. I'd been locked up in Istanbul prison for 4 years now. But every day while I was inside, I talked to people. That's all people talk about in jail is, escape. And if you go here and if you go there. So I knew all of the places to go. I'd had maps. I studied everything.
So you've basically got everyone who's still in jail telling you how to get out of jail.
I knew how to get out, because everybody had a plan. Everybody had stories. Everybody told you, when you get to the border here, there's this. And I would listen to all of that. And of course, I read my maps, and I'd been making plans forever. And now I had to carry it out. But what I knew was better for me to get out of the Istanbul prison by being transferred to this island, which was 17 miles off the coast of Turkey. İmralı Island. It was a work island, half open, they called it, where we were locked down at night, but we were actually walked around the island during. It was a beautiful island. If it wasn't the prison, it would be beautiful. Boats would come over from the mainland and unload their produce. Turkey has incredible produce. And we would carry these 50-kilo sacks of produce up the hill to the canning factory that the prison ran, cheap labor, and then work that, and then bring the finished cans and stuff back to the boats. These boats were never allowed to spend the night in our harbor because it was a prison island. Except one day when a big storm out at sea kicked up, I noticed that the boats were all anchoring for the night, and each boat had a little wooden dinghy tied behind. Aha. I was an ocean lifeguard. I was a surfer, a swimmer. That wasn't the hard part. But 27 kilometers, 17 miles, that was a little tough after 5 years in jail. But now these little dinghies. So when I saw those dinghies, I knew that's my way out. And now I just had to wait until another storm kicked things up. And I needed to get out soon because September was here, October was coming. It was going to get too cold to escape. So I needed to get out soon. So at the next big storm, it built up in the morning. We worked during the day. And by the end of the day, the storm was howling and blowing. And I knew this is my way out. I had arranged with a couple of kapadai, which is the big time gangster prisoners who really run things in jail. These guys lived like kings. They were on this island. Again, it was a beautiful island. They didn't work. They had money. They had power. They told the guards what to do. So it sounds strange, but that's how things worked in Turkish prison. And I made friends with one of the baddest guys, one of the biggest, baddest killer guys who ran the place. In the outside world, madmen and killers are sort of at the bottom of the social structure. In prison, everything turns over. The baddest guys are at the top. The bottom of the structure was people like me, yum-yums, they called us, foreigners, drug smugglers. We were literally at the bottom of the social status. But I learned early on to make friends with the baddest guy in the room. I'd either make him laugh or hopefully not have to go beyond that and become friends with them, because then nobody bothers you if you're friends with the baddest guy. So I made friends with this really badass Turkish guy. He found me funny. I was speaking good Turkish at that point. I was telling him stories about home in the United States, and he wanted to know, I had a photo album with a picture of my sister, who was really a pretty lady. And he said, is your sister married? No. Or, does your dad have a company? He could get me a job. And I'm telling him whatever he wants to hear. He and a couple of the other Kapadais every night, when lockdown would come, when all the rest of us would get locked into our barracks and our cells, these guys would go down to the counting office, where a couple of nerdy guys with adding machines were toting up the day's prison profits, because we worked there, we canned things, and playing kulach games, card games, and playing dominoes, smoking joints, drinking Rocky. It was like a party every night. I arranged to be there with these guys. Again, I speak not good Turkish, but very good communicative Turkish, and I'm the only foreigner on the island. And I would make these guys laugh. I would tell stories. At one point, I'm sure each and every one of these guys had designs on what they could get from me or not. And I didn't dissuade them of any of that. I was lucky. I got in a fight my first night in jail, and it helped me out in a strange way. I get lost on tangents, so I'm still on the island, but I'd gotten in a fight my first night in jail 4 years before, and one thing led to another. And I'm not real big, but I used to be very fast and very nasty, and I'd done martial arts, and I was an athlete and such, but I was scared shitless. And next thing I know, I'm fighting with this guy, and bam, I hit him in the face. He goes down, his nose is bleeding. He's screaming for the guards, who come rushing in, and they're dragging me out. I'm trying to explain. I don't speak Turkish now. They don't speak English. He woke me up. He hit me first. All they know is new guy, first night in a fight. Lesson needs to be taught. And the lesson they have in Turkish prison is, like throughout the Middle East, it's a punishment called falaka, where they tie up your ankles and beat your feet with this whippy stick. And it hurts like a mother. And this guy's hitting me, and I'm screaming and kicking, and he's hitting my hands, he's hitting my feet, and I think they're killing me. Turns out it wasn't really a bad beating. Nothing broken. If there's nothing broken, that's not a bad beating. If it's broken, it's a bad beating. If it's broken and they beat you the next day, that's a really bad beating. But what it did for me was, this guy Ziad, he walked around the prison for like the next 2 weeks with a big black eye and a swollen face. And people said, what happened to Ziad? Because he was well known in the prison. He dealt drugs and he had connections. And they said, oh, the new guy, Willie, which was my name in jail. And then they see Willie, who, again, I'm 150 pounds. It's like, that guy, really? So, but the thing is, it gave me a bit of a prison rep. It's like, don't fuck with this guy. Look what he did to Ziad. That helped me a lot. I didn't have to fight all that much in jail. When I did, I made it very quick. If you and I are in a fight, Rob, and the guards come in and I'm all bloody, they'll beat you equally bloody. If you're all bloody, they'll beat me equally bloody. You can't win. So you have to get in, get out, and get away from the guards. But when I got to the island and I made friends with the badass in this place, now I've got a way past the night bed check, which is what I wanted. So I went over there before bed check, and I hung with the guys, and they're drinking Rocky, and they're smoking their joints, and the wind is still blowing, and the storm is still kicking up the island. And I told them, I don't feel so good. They said, here, have some hash. No, I don't want hash. Drink some Rocky. No, I don't want Rocky. I just need to go back to the barracks and rest. But instead of going back to the barracks, I made my way down to the wet cobblestone road to the harbor. And underneath this wooden overhang, there were these big concrete vats used to hold tomato paste and such. And I hid in one of these vats, waiting to be sure everybody's gone, that everything's right. It took me a while to gather the courage, but I finally was able to lift my leg over the top of one of the vats. And as I did, I heard this clattering on the stone beach. And I dropped down into the vat again, and this this border guard, Turkish guard, walking along the beach in the rain. He steps in under the overpass to get out of the rain. I mean, he hates being out here. Nobody's escaping off this island. This is a half open island. People come here because they've got lesser sentences and they're waiting to go out, except me. But what I told everybody, and they all believed it, was, I'm an American, and yes, I have a life sentence, but the U.S. government is going to bring me home, which a lot of people thought that was going to happen. I was hoping it would. I had a bunch of lawyers trying to make that happen, but of course it didn't. But it sort of gave me a little edge again. I'm not going to escape. I was able to get up over the wall after the guard left, down into the water, swimming out through the boats. Again, I'm a swimmer. That's not the hard part. What I was worried about is someone in one of the boats seeing me, or the guards at the end of the pier with a big flashlight, spotlight, with machine guns, seeing me swimming out towards one of the boats. Luckily, nobody's looking. It's raining, it's windy. I got out past the first couple of boats and then pulled myself over the edge of one of these dinghies and collapsed in the bottom and just trying to catch my breath. And I reached up and I grabbed the oars and realized they don't have oars on a Turkish dinghy. They have these wooden pegs in the rail and big pretzel around both of the oars, and somehow you put the rope around the peg and in the front of the back. I figured it out, but the boat's rocking back and forth, and I'm worried about the guards, but I figure it out, and I finally was able to get into rowing a little bit and move the boat out of the harbor, away from the prison, out past the last of the actual fishing boats that were anchored there. And I was rowing and I was stroking and rowing through. And at one point I looked around and realized I'm past the last of the boats. I'm out into the open sea. I'm free, which I threw my hands up in the air, literally. The oar almost went in the water. I pulled it back, but I was free. I was beyond the bounds for the first time in 5 years. And it was an incredible feeling. People said, well, how do you get the energy to row 17 miles? I've been in jail 5 years. I'm like a piece of metal. I was so ready to go. I'd have rowed 1,000 miles, and I rowed. What I used at first, the island is sort of a horseshoe-shaped island. So if I was using the lights of the island as I was moving, I knew from my maps, from all of the scuttlebutt, and on clear days, I could actually see the mainland 17 miles away. I knew where I needed to go and how I needed to get there. So I started rowing and I used the lights of the island. If I would ever lose the lights, it meant I had drifted too far to the south. I already know the current from the north is pushing me down. So I had to pull harder on the right oar to correct course. My hand got all bloody. I wrapped a handkerchief around it and kept pulling because I knew I needed to make it to the mainland of Asia Minor. And nothing was going to stop me from doing that. And I rowed. After another 20 minutes or so, the lights of the island were gone. And I was like lost out here in the rainy, stormy night. But I kept rowing.
Yeah. So did you get a little disoriented once you have no bearings? That would be, you would start to kind of maybe panic a little. Am I still going the right way?
Yeah, no, well, I'd panicked immediately. Then you get rid of it because it doesn't matter how scared you are. After that goes away. Like, I'm scared shitless. I'm so panicked. But you know what? There's no choice here. I'm much more focused and ready. I've been working for 5 years for this moment. I'd done my yoga every single morning. I did 100 push-ups every day. I had everything planned out. And one way or the other, I'm going to be free or I'm going to be dead. I'm not going back to jail again.
And do you pack a bag? Do you have water? Do you have any money at all?
I had some money. I had a wallet with the money that I had in it. I actually had some water with me. Not a lot, unfortunately. I had a little plasticky bottle. They don't have, like now, anywhere you go, there's plastic bottles everywhere, too many places. I had one that I was able to use. I had some water, but again, I didn't need any of that. I didn't need anything except freedom. And I was going to do anything and everything to get free. And I just kept rowing. Rob, you said disorient. Yeah, I didn't know where I was after a while, but I kind of knew because the wind was blowing. I knew the current was coming from the north. It comes down from the Bosphorus and down past me and then out through the Dardanelles. So I kind of knew by the current where I'm going, and I needed to cut across the current, and I needed to get to the mainland of Asia Minor. And I rowed all night, and I was singing to myself, if they catch me, they beat me. I make it, I'm free. Catch me, they beat me. I was doing whatever and rowing all night, and I rowed and I rowed. And after a while, it just became automatic. My body was exhausted, but I didn't care. I was so close. I'm free. I'm beyond the bounds. And I kept rowing. And early in the morning, I don't know, before the sun was sort of coming up and it was getting a little bit lighter, and the dinghy scraped down on the sand and scraped down again, another wave. And I looked up and realized I made it. I'm looking at this rocky coastline and I'm on the shore. So I jumped out of the boat and I actually pulled it up. I probably should have banged a hole in the boat and sunk it or something, but I love this little rowboat. I pulled it up on the sand. I hugged the bow of this boat. It was like, I love this little dinghy. And then I could see that the storm was passing and the sun was rising. And off in the distance, I can see Imrali Island Prison. And I know they're waking up. And the first thing they're going to do is they have a morning bed check count. And invariably somebody would be missing or sleeping or doing something somewhere. But I knew it would take them a while. This is 1975 in Turkey. There aren't instant communications. You know, they had old phones and I just knew I had time, but the clock was ticking. Yeah. So I started running north up the beach along the rocky edge of Asia Minor. And it was the finest morning of my life. And I kept running and running. At one point, I found up against the cliffs a big puddle of water, a big puddle full of rainwater, because it's been raining all night. So I used that to drench my thirst and quench my thirst and wash the salt off. And I kept running. Again, I knew from my map sort of where I was. I needed to get up to a little town somewhere and then make my way up the coast, literally, physically up the line, because it's all a big trench up the side of it, and make my way up to the coast to a town called Bursa, which was the biggest town. There's a local, I hit a little village and make my way to this bigger town where from there I could get a bus from Bursa back to Istanbul, which is where I knew now I needed to go. And I had a friend in Istanbul, a guy in jail who owed me big time. I saved him from a real bad beating one time in jail. He was a friend, and I knew he was an Austrian guy. He spoke terrific Turkish. He'd become a Muslim, and I knew he would hide me. He had an assistant manager job in some little fleabag hotel. That's how he was working. And I knew if I got there, he'd hide me out. We'd get some false papers, and in a week or so, things would die down, and I'd slip out of the country. But when I got there, the little hotel manager said, "Oh, Wolfgang, no, you just missed him. He left yesterday, Afghanistan." It's like, no. That's the end of plan A. I was so freaked and exhausted. I wanted to collapse on the ground and cry. I was done. I just wanted someone to take care of me. But I'm now out wandering the streets, kind of freaked out, but still amazed by life and people and hair and women and cars and dogs. And at the same time, I kept thinking, oh, hair. I had a lot of blonde hair. It's all gray now, but it was...
You don't really blend into this.
No, not at all. I had this curly blonde hair and a blonde mustache, which of course was not the biggest advantage in jail. So I knew I needed to get rid of this. So I found a funky hotel down by the waterfront. First off, I bought some Siarenk Boya, black hair dye. And I found a funky hotel down by the waterfront. And I wanted to check in there. And the guy said, "You have no luggage?" I said, "No." And he said, "Passport?" I said, I lost it. It was in my luggage. And the guy looked at me like, mm-hmm. I said, "Can I pay for 2 nights right now in cash?" He said, "Yes." Mm-hmm. So I got the room and I went up to the room and locked myself in. I propped this chair up against the door and I got this gooey paste and shit. And it smelled like cat piss and really nasty. And I had some things and I put it in my hair, which was sticky and black, and I put it in the mustache. The hair looked bad. It was lank and black, but at least it passed. The mustache looked so phony. It looked like this big chunk of licorice on my upper lip. I went back out. I bought a razor, came back, shaved it off. Now I got this lank black hair and the raw space where my mustache used to be covered with black. I was a mess. I collapsed into bed, totally exhausted. Waking with every creak on the stairs. I'm ready to jump out the back window. I'm on the 2nd floor. I'm looking out the window. I would jump to the alley. I hardly slept at all, but the next morning I was able to make my way to the bus station in Istanbul and catch a bus to Edirne, which is a border town on a river that comes down from Bulgaria, separates Turkey from Greece. And I know on the other side of that river, again, I'm a swimmer. It doesn't matter how wild the river is, how deep I'm swimming across it. And I knew if I got to Greece, I'd be safe, because the Greeks had never sent me back to Turkey. Not for 2 kilos of hashish. They've been enemies for 1,000 years. So I got the bus, and the bus started heading west, and we went for a couple of hours. I've got my little map that I've been looking at. It's all wet and water stained now, but I know where I'm going. And I don't know, about an hour out of Istanbul, suddenly the bus pulled over, and a Turkish cop with a machine gun on it steps onto the bus. My heart stopped right there. I'm in the back of the bus, but he's up there. He's talking to the driver. He looks down the aisle, looking at all the people, and I'm totally freaking out back here, trying not to breathe. And then he looks back at the driver, checks his papers, tips his helmet with his machine gun, steps off, the door closes, the bus starts up, my heart starts to beat. We finally, we make our way to Edirne. Now, the river's right there. I just know I got to get to this river. It's somewhere out here. I'm not quite sure where, but I know on my map it's right there. Little tiny space on the map, a little bit further in real life. And at the cab station, I found a young, long-haired Turkish kid who was driving an old black Buick. They had a lot of old American cars back then in Turkey. And he had this, actually it was blue, an old dark blue Buick. And I asked him for, I said, my friends were in the campground south of here near the river, and I've been separated from my friends. Can you take me there? And the first thing he said was, where'd you learn Turkish? I said, in prison in Istanbul. I said, you want to buy some hashish? I said, no, I don't want any hashish. I just need to get to the campground. So we drive south for a ways, and he's trying to talk to me a little bit, and I'm looking around, and we stop in a little village, and he yells out to some people for directions to the campground. I mean, there's no campground here, but I just told him that. And I see there's a guy holding a newspaper and a full-page color drawing of
Oh no.
this muscle-bound, I should look like that, this muscle-bound blonde guy in a dinghy cutting a rope on a rope with a big knife. Like, holy shit, I'm on the front page of the paper. I said, go. So he drove down further, and he stopped a little bit further in this bend in the road, and there was a taverna up on a little edge of the hill, and an old wooden place. And he yelled out to some people for directions to the campground. And this big, heavy-set guy in a blue uniform with a tie hanging open and a beer bottle in his hand saunters down the steps. He's an off-duty cop. He approaches the window. He's leaning on the edge. I can smell the beer on his breath. And the kids tell him, yeah, the campground, my friend. He's got a campground here. I'm saying, go. And the guy says, no fucking campground here. And I'm telling the kid, go. So finally he goes, and we drive and we move away. And finally he comes down to, and the dirt road, which was getting narrower and more beat up, kind of peters out. Now it's a track, and it's a dirt track, and he won't go any further. The kid, he said, no, it'll hurt his car. I said, no, here, I have some more money. Take this. I know the campground is just up ahead here somewhere. So he drives me a little ways, and he stops at the edge of this dry cornfield. And I get out, and I tell him, I'll find my friends. I gave him the last of my Turkish money. And I offered him go with God, Turkish phrase, like Allah Kutarsın. I say Allah Kutarsın to him, and then the response, it's like response from back and forth. And he says Allah Kutarsın for me. And then he actually tries to talk me out of it. He said, it's not good as a tourist alone out here at night. It's dangerous. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. I said, I'll find my friend. And he drove off, trailing his plume of dust. And I dropped down into this dry cornfield and waited there. I needed it to get fully dark, and I waited. And mosquitoes were flying on me. I didn't care. Drink my blood now. This is the last chance you're going to get to find any more of my blood. And when it finally got dark enough and the little stars started twinkling, I headed west. I mean, I knew my direction. I needed to get to the river. I mean, I know from the map it's down there somewhere. I can't see it. I'm in the woods, and there's a lot of hills and things, but I knew somewhere up ahead is the river. So I started to make my way towards it, up over this rocky ground, and stones are slipping out from under my feet, and I'm trying to be quiet. At one point, I heard dogs, and all I'm thinking is they're after me, dogs, and I got dogs, and that freaked me out totally. And I started scrambling further. I actually took off my shoes and socks and buried them at the base of this tree, thinking these dogs sniff these shoes, and it'll blow your noses out because my shoes, I've had them on for a while now. They're pretty fun. Then I climbed up in a tree and moved out onto a branch and dropped down and made my way through. Again, my feet are all, I'm barefoot now. My feet are getting all chewed up, but I don't care. I'm so close, I don't care. So I make my way through the woods, and early on towards, I don't know, the sun is beginning to come up behind the trees behind me. And I know I come to a little dirt road, which I know I shouldn't be on, but it felt so good on my feet that I said, and up ahead, I could see like a bunch of trees. And I said, I'll get back in the woods just past that little like tunnel in the trees. And as I walked past, it was like a wooden outhouse, like a kiosk. And suddenly a bayonet slashed down in front of me. And I froze there. And this guard in the darkness yelled something. And I didn't understand him. And he yelled again. And I realized, I don't understand this guy. I speak good Turkish by now, which means he's speaking Greek, because I wasn't sure I was really in Greece or not. I didn't want to go up to the first guy having to be a Turkish border guard. The river has shifted over the years. The actual boundary has changed. So I was a little confused. But when he started to speak Greek, it was like, yes, I collapsed on the ground with my arms in the air. And he started blowing his whistle, and all these other guards gathered around me. And this one guy with a flashlight stuck his flashlight on me, and he said, who are you? Who are you? I said, I'm an American. I just escaped from Turkey, which they then kept me in a little cell in the woods for 12 days while they figured out what to do with me. I could do 12 days on my head after 5 years in a Turkish prison. But they eventually, the Greeks, they actually loved me because, anybody who's an enemy or escaped from the Turks, the Greeks are going to love. What they did do is eventually the Greek government deported me as being a bad influence upon the youth of Greece. That's the actual charge. Same charge against Socrates, which I said, there's some company I am proud to be in.
And what kind of punishment is that? That's exactly what you wanted.
As long as they don't ask me to drink any hemlock, I'm fine with it. But they put, and I got down to, we contacted the American consul who came out, and then they contacted my dad. My dad wired some money, and the American consul took a photo for a new passport, black hair that I dyed myself, in the Istanbul hotel room. And they took me to the Thessaloniki airport, and I caught the first plane, which was going out, which was to Amsterdam, where I said, if I'm going to be free anywhere in the world, it'll be Amsterdam. And I loved Amsterdam. It was amazing. I got off the bus, a free man. Just, nobody said anything to me. The bus door opened. I walked out, and there was Amsterdam and the lights and people with bicycles and ringing little bells. And again, women on the sidewalks. And just, I wandered for a while, absolutely blown away by everything. And then I heard some funky Wilson Pickett music, Mustang Sally, coming out of a little hotel bar. And that drew me right in because I love Wilson Pickett, Mustang Sally. And I actually had my first free meal, which was peach pancakes and a strawberry ice cream soda. The waitress brought it over. I ate it all down. She came back. I said, do it again. I had 2 strawberry ice cream sodas and 2 peach pancakes. It was incredible. Wandered the streets for a while, the back alleys and the little canals in Amsterdam. They've got all of these, it's the red light district. They've got all these little windows with beautiful half-naked women lounging in these windows, which I hadn't been with a woman for 5 years, but I didn't really want to go in there. I was so amazed just looking at them, like I'm looking at Lori now. Well, how beautiful. And they're that close to me. I didn't want to go in. I'd look at them until I realized this jerk off, he's just looking, he's not buying. And they come to the window, smile sweetly, and they'd close the drapes. And I'd move to the next window. I did that until, I don't know, I was so exhausted. I went back to my hotel room and collapsed and woke up the next day and was able to eventually make my way to the airport and to fly back to New York City. When I got off the plane at Kennedy, looking for a kind of a quiet reentry into life. There were 100 reporters at Kennedy Airport, all screaming and yelling, Billy, what's it like to be home? I don't know. I just got here. I haven't even seen my mom. That never stopped. I mean,
did you have a feeling that was going to happen, or was that take you by complete surprise?
No, well, what I knew was there'd been so much publicity about me back home. The local newspaper, Newsday, picked up, local boy goes bad. And so they had my story for the first 4 years. And again, I was a hash smuggler, drugs. Back then, this is hashish that I'm smuggling. Cannabis, hashish, what's legal now that they've discovered is healing drug for many reasons. It's a drug, it's a plant, it's a plant that humans have been using for 5,000 years. We have evidence of this in Egypt. It's only until the mid-30s when this whole war on drugs and this insanity with the DEA happened that this became this big boogaboo that it is, and all these draconian sentences were laid down. But I knew that, once I got back there, I'm okay. And I got home, and my dad and my brother actually were at the airport, picked me up, and they drove me back. And I got there to see my mom, who I hadn't seen in 5 years, because she didn't want to come and see me in jail. And I didn't want her to see me in prison. God, I can't believe I still get so choked up about this shit. It's why when, I've been doing a one-man show until COVID for like 7 years, telling this story. There were a couple of years there where I stopped talking about this. I wrote Midnight Express. I wrote the second book, Midnight Return, 10 years later. 76 was Midnight Express. About 86 was Midnight Return, sort of a follow-up. What's next? It's called Midnight Return, Escaping Midnight Express. And then I actually wrote a third book that was a collection of these letters, the Midnight Express letters, because I wrote thousands, literally. I mean, I was a journalism major. I went to Marquette University. I wrote letters every day. And people gave me back the letters when I escaped. And I was able to look at them and use them to write the first book. In fact, I wrote 15 pages, gave it to Julian Bach, who was a literary agent back then, who I just loved. And he read the first 15 pages. He said, "Well, Billy, now we know this is very good, because now we know that we need to bring a professional writer in." I said, no, what are you talking about? I went to Marquette. I'm a writer. I've got these thousands of letters. He said, yes. But your style, he termed it the hysterical subjective. He said, this would be good for Rolling Stone and your immediate peers. But if you want a book, and if you want to get it out and sell, which I desperately needed because I had no money, I owed everybody money. He said, you need to organize this. And I met a bunch of writers, some big name people. I won't even mention their names, but 2 or 3 really big names, all 3 of whom I thought were total douchebags. And then he brought me to a guy named Bill Hoffer, who'd been a writer, who'd worked with a couple of other people. And I instantly connected with Bill. Bill turned out to be very much like later on when I got married, like my wife, which was very calm, very steady, but never gave up, just kept pushing me. And I needed that because I wanted to forget jail. I'd still be procrastinating about writing all these books, but I needed to. So it kind of was foisted upon me. And Bill and I sat down, and for 2 or 3 days with a tape recorder, he had me doing what I'm doing here, just talking nonstop. And then they had some poor woman transcribe all this. It's a humbling experience to read what you've written. Again, when I get personal, I go third person, but you've written what I've written at 22 and 23, 24, thinking what I know about life. It was terrible to read what I said, but it was very valuable for us because we were able to say, here's where we start, here's where we finish. All we need to do is fill in the middle. And Bill I'd write, and I'd send it off to him, and he would give me some red lines or some suggestions. I got hoisted on my own letters because at one point he'd come up to New York and we'd do the latest stuff, or I'd go to Maryland where he lived and we'd work for a week and do the latest stuff. And he kept pushing me. I wanted to take a break. Turns out that forcing me to do this was by far the best thing psychologically I could have done. Most guys getting out of jail don't talk about it. They don't write books about it. They kind of hide it and bring it in. And that is deadly. It just eats you up. But I was forced to talk about it and write about it and all these details. I wanted to forget jail. At one point, I wrote something and Bill said, no, wait a second. I see here, you're writing, you're saying blah, blah, blah, blah, blah. But I've got the letter from that day, and you're saying D, D, D, D, D. So he said, here's what I need. I need not you, not the 28-year-old guy who's out and free and in the newspapers and getting laid and so happy to be free. I need the kid who was busted at 23 and 24 and thought his life was over. You need to write from that perspective. And that, like, I get it. I didn't want to do it, but I got what he did. He forced me to write this. We worked constantly. E.P. Dutton was the publisher. I loved publishers. Now I'm self-promoting. It's like, it's a bitch to promote stuff yourself, unless you have lovely people like you who will spread the word. But back then, the publisher did everything. They sent you out for the interviews and such, but they took most of the money and they only paid you blah, blah, blah. But what they said was, this is a hot item. You're in all the newspapers. We need this as soon as possible. And they offered me a much better deal on the paperback than we would have gotten if they said, if you can get the book out by, I think they gave us like 5 months or maybe even less, which is, a real short period of time to get a book finished like this. But it made a much better paperback deal. So Bill and I both said, fuck this. And we just wrote nonstop, and we never let up. Anytime I needed a break, he'd say, paperback deal. I'd start writing again, get it done. I finished everything except, I think it was chapter 9, the chapter about Bakirköy, the madhouse, where I went at one of my previous escape attempts. I've been in some strange places in my life, but nothing compares to Bakirköy Mental Hospital. It was unbelievable. I didn't want to do it. And finally he said, we're done except chapter 9. You need to finish. So I said, fine. And I sat down and I did Bakirköy, the whole chapter, in about 2 or 3 hours, almost nonstop working. Bill took it, brought his red pen in, and hardly changed a word. He said, this is it. So we finished the book, and E.P. Dutton was happy. And before the book was even out and published, Julian Bach said, Billy, we have a phone call here from a gentleman in Hollywood named, what's his name? Goober, Peter Goober. Apparently he produces movies, and somehow he got a galley of the book from E.P. Dutton, and he wants to fly you to Hollywood to talk about making a movie. It's like, what? I've been in jail for 5 years. I just been home and they're talking about making a movie. How bizarre. I mean, I loved it, of course, but how bizarre is this? So they flew me to Hollywood, first class, which was nice. Brooke Shields was sitting next to me on the plane. Wow, 17-year-old. That's a dangerous situation, let me tell you. She was gorgeous. And they flew me to Hollywood, and I started meeting with people. And we made a deal. My agent sent me, I had a contract. By the time I came back, there was a contract. Peter Goober was a mover. I love Peter because he gets things done. He doesn't bullshit. And he wanted to make it quick. And he brought in a writer to work with me, a gentleman named Stone, Oliver Stone. I wasn't really sure who he was at that time, but I liked him. They put me in a hotel room. He was manic. he was snorting coke and drinking Bloody Marys and smoking joints. I love that energy. If I bring it on. And he and I talked nonstop, day in and day out. He'd read the early galley of the book, so he had an idea of where it was, and he had his own thoughts of where he wanted to go and what to do. And after a week in a hotel room nonstop with Oliver, I said, what happens now? He said, now I go off into the mountains with a big mound of cocaine, and I write the script, and then I send it off to them. And he said, it's very much like having a child, and you put it out into the world, because once you pass it on to the studio, you're done. I asked Julian early on, before I even signed the contract, when they first sent me the offer, I said, what happens if I don't like what they do? If they make a movie I don't like? He said, there's a clause in here that said, if you don't like what they've done, you can take your name off the credits. It's like, I said, really? He said, but they're promoting this movie based upon your name. He said, they got 10 lawyers at Columbia picking their nose. You can't sue them. You sign this contract, you're done. Whatever you get is what you get. It's like, okay. And I signed it. I was very lucky because what I got was, an amazing script, and Alan Parker, who was an incredible director, coming in to do it. And then I so lucked out. They cast a bunch of people. They had Richard Gere was going to do it, and a couple of other folks, but they cast Brad Davis, who put his heart and soul into this movie. When I did promotion stuff for a while with Alan Parker, I said, why did you cast Brad Davis? He said, he said, I didn't want a name. I didn't want an actor who people knew anything about. He was relatively unknown. He said, I wanted someone who, if I grabbed him by the back of the neck and struck him, threw him down somewhere naked in the world, he'd scramble and make his way out. I said, is that how you see me? He said, yeah, actually I do. I said, fine. I loved what Brad did. I loved the fact that they made the movie. But again, I've been isolated for 5 years. Now I'm out and the press hits me. And then the book comes out and I'm doing talks about the book. And then the movie. And the movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival in May of 1976. No, 78, May of 78. The movie premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. That turned my world upside down because everybody in the world, yeah.
Not only turn your world upside down, but so you're sitting, this is your first exposures, because I know there were several things that were changed from your real life story to the film. One, especially at the end, which was kind of almost egregious, where you kill a guard to escape in the film.
Which I didn't do, yes.
Which is that's a major change to the character too,
Right.
To do it. I understand it's Hollywood, they got to add some excitement and whatever it may be. Is your first viewing of the film also your first exposure to what they changed? Did you read the script first, or did you see it happen in front of you right then and there?
No, actually, Columbia, they brought me to Fifth Avenue in New York. Columbia had some offices there, and they put me in a little room, and they turned out the lights, and the movie came up. And I sat there for 2 hours watching this film all by myself. I could barely breathe when this movie ended. And the changes in the film, for me, the two biggest problems that I had with the movie is one, the ending, the escape, which, they've got me killing a guard and then skipping out the door. I always say if it was that easy, it wouldn't have taken me 5 years, but at least I understood why. I said, why did you guys do that? And he said, first there's a cost. Making a film, a running, escaping, shooting on the water, that kind of would cost a lot. And then Alan said, what 45 minutes of this film, Billy, do you want to cut? We've made a film about prison and hope and fear. And he made the movie he wanted to make, which is fine. He's the director, he should. My problems were two things particularly. Well, one, the courtroom scene. I'm being sentenced to life in prison, and this is my chance to speak in front of the court. And Oliver changed the words to, you're a nation of pigs, I fuck you all, I fuck your sons, and I fuck your daughters. First off, the logic. You've just been sentenced to life in this country, and now you're telling everybody, the whole Turkish country, I fuck your sons. That made no sense to me. You just wouldn't do that. And secondly, what I really said was, you're going to sentence me to more prison. I can't agree with you. All I can do is forgive you, because that's what I learned in jail. That's what I needed. I know Nelson Mandela. He said, if you leave prison and you don't leave the anger and the bitterness behind, you're still in prison. And boy, is that true. So I needed to open out to this, and I'd learned things about myself, and I discovered my reason for being and all kinds of stuff that held me in good stead, but was sorely tested by this film and what happened. And that courtroom scene, the world saw that. The world hated the Turks.
Turkey, yeah, absolutely.
After that scene, I mean, first off, they were the Ottoman Empire. Every country around them and they were brutal. And for 500 years, they ruled that part of the world. So I understand each one of the countries around them are their enemy. But at the same time, they took Turkish tourism dropped like 95% when the movie came out. And, to this day, they're still 50 years later. I still have people say, oh my God, I saw Midnight Express. I'll never go to Turkey. It's like, no, go. It's a beautiful country. I don't like their politics now. And Erdogan is the dictator that, I don't want to get into politics, but, and he, you can go to Turkey, don't get arrested. You won't like the prison. Let me put it that way. More journalists are in jail in Turkey than any other country in the world. Because that's
really.
Yes, they are very repressive, because Erdogan is hanging on, I think, clinging to power now. There was a reason I started this whole line, but I sort of got lost here. What were we talking about? Coming back, the differences between the book and the film.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the beginning, when you tell, and of course, as you know, you were on the show before. We went through the whole story, so I'm very familiar with it. But I do know that, uh, there I've seen, and I don't know if it's in the film that you get into the fight or if it's over a blanket.
Yes,
So the blanket thing, was that real? So like someone
yes.
told you to go get the blankets. So that was separate from the fight then.
No, actually, that was the beginning of. I was arrested, and when I got to prison, they put me in this, locked me in this cell, and this guy who sort of ran things, he didn't give me a blanket. It was cold and such, and he kind of got a bunch of keys on this thing. Nothing's electronic. It's all these old bit of keys, and he couldn't. I was watching him. He was trying to find this different key to lock my cell, and I realized he didn't really lock it. I heard him jangling all his keys down the hall, and I heard psst from the next cell. And one of the other guys there, he said, "Blankets, last cell, down the end." The German guy, down the end. So I went down to the last cell, and I reached in, and I was able to grab a blanket. And I actually reached to grab another one. Brought him a blanket. You gotta be careful. And he'd given me a stick with a nail on the end of it. That's how I actually got the blanket. So I came back and I gave him a blanket, gave him back his stick with the nail in the end. Closed my door, curled up on this little skimpy, stinky mattress, and just collapsed into dead sleep. And then the door slams open, and Amin, I called him Ziad is the real name. He came charging into my cell. Apparently, he was pissed off that I'd gone against his orders. After I told the story to some friends, they said, you know what? He didn't want you to have a blanket because he'd come around later and sell you a blanket. So he was pissed off that I did that on my own. But he's screaming and yelling at me. And he grabbed my blanket. He yanks the blanket. I jump up. And again, I'm not big, but I was really, really fast. I did a lot of martial arts. And what I learned was first strike. I don't care how big and strong a guy is, eyes, throat, balls. If you can hit him in that one of those places, the fight's over. And so this guy is grabbing me, grabbed the blanket. Next thing I know, bang, and I hit him in the face. The rest of the story I told you, that's when he went down. That's when the guards dragged me out. And that's when they beat me. And they beat my feet and they beat my hands and then brought me back and threw me back in the cell. And my hands were all swollen up and my feet were bloody, but no broken bones. And the truth is, not a bad beating. I discovered later, it's not a bad bit. Luckily, as a tourist, as a foreigner, we had a little bit of an edge in prison. We were on the bottom of the social structure, and all of the Turkish convicts really didn't like us because we had a council on the outside. We had people kind of looking out for us. And the Turks were aware you can't fuck with the tourists too much because there's a council who's going to have to be answered to. And that kind of held us in good stead. And then after I beat Ziad, then I was really in good shape because people left me alone. If you go up to somebody, challenge him, you'll get your ass kicked by somebody. But if you don't bother people, they kind of let me alone. So that helped.
That's good. So I know recently, and it's maybe within the last couple of years, I saw that you took umbrage to Oliver Stone's book and his recollections of
Yes.
things versus yours. What was it that you took issue with? I was going to look it up beforehand, but I was like, you know what? I want to hear it from Billy.
Oliver's brilliant. Oliver is a brilliant filmmaker. His worst films are better than most people's best, etc. But he wrote something. His book is coming out. What's it? Chasing the Light. And I was going to read it, and I hadn't gotten to it. And then my phone started to ring. And one of my friends was saying, "Have you read what Oliver Stone wrote about you in his book?" I said, "Not yet. Should I?" And they said, "Holy shit." So I started to read it. He made a couple of points there that he said, well, Billy Hayes did this, and Billy Hayes did that, and Billy Hayes did this. Each one of these points were easily refuted because they were all in my book. I'm assuming that since he wrote the screenplay, he read the book the first time, but he had things in there that were just kind of nasty. And he put them in just to be some kind of nasty little dig. But the truth is, each one of his points was so easily refuted that I could just write about, you said this, but in my book, it shows you it's that. So what happened?
Well, what did he say that bothered you the most?
Let's see. He said, now that he's out, Billy Hayes has talked about the fact that he had a homosexual experience in prison. He didn't tell us that to start with. Well, yes, Oliver, I wrote about it in the goddamn book,
It's in
but
the
he
fucking
changed
movie.
it. Yes, he changed it. In the movie, he had Brad shake it. It said Brad, and they were doing this yoga, and they were sort of coming close to each other, and they forced Brad to shake his head no. Brad afterwards told me Brad was bisexual and unfortunately died of AIDS later on. But Brad said he wanted to do that scene, and he forced them to shoot it one time the way he wanted it. He said, just have like the steam come up, because it was the steam room,
Yeah.
and let it go.
Nice.
But no, Columbia, they would allow their protagonists to smuggle drugs, to bite a guy's tongue out, to escape from prison,
to kill a guard.
kill a guard, but they wouldn't let him touch another man. So it says more about them than it does about me. But Oliver made a point that was one point he did. And then later on, he said, oh, yeah. And in the book, Billy says something about he discovered his reason for being in prison. No, he found God in jail. That's very funny. That's where people find him. But he said, oh, but he didn't mention that prior to coming out. Now that he's out and free, it's like, Oliver, excuse me, page 74. Literally, he made points that were so easily refuted. I would have let them all go, except down towards the end of his article. Down towards the end of the book, where he was finishing up his stuff about me. He said, I don't know how doing what he did and not telling us. He said, oh, I'd known that Billy Hayes had smuggled 3 times prior to getting arrested. I never would have wrote this story that I won my first Academy Award with.
Well,
yeah, right. Horse shit. First off, I couldn't mention it again because of the legality involved.
It's irrelevant to you getting caught. How many times you did it beforehand doesn't change.
No, I was a smuggler. I was a drug smuggler. Whether I did 3 or 1, whatever. But it pissed me off because he wrote that, and then he said, I don't know how Billy Hayes sleeps at night. How do you live with yourself? It's like, fuck you. So I wrote this long thing and said, he said this, but maybe he forgot. And then later on, there was something else where he said something else, and this is in the book and refuted. I said, maybe he forgot again. Or maybe Oliver, who is famous for his historical, what is it called? Historical revisionism, as he does with everything he writes. I met John Densmore, produced a play I directed in LA. So we shared some Oliver Stone. He changed my life stories also. But it just pissed me off that he would make a point of putting me down in a way that there was no need for it. Yeah. And he didn't even do it cleverly. If he'd done it cleverly, I couldn't say too much. I could refute him. So I wrote to Variety, a letter to Variety. And the only people who read it were people in the industry, which is who I wanted to read it, to know that the stuff he wrote in his book is bullshit. And then later, I got so much feedback from so many people who said, let me tell you my Oliver Stone story, what he did to me or what he said to. So, Oliver, if you ever hear this, no, I'm going to let that go. I'm going to let that go.
Yeah, but it's whether or not you did it a few times before, that like the first 20 minutes of Midnight Express will go down as some of the most intense 20 minutes of film in history. And that's
Alan Parker and Brad.
No one can refute that. And it's all on the page too, of course. He wrote that. It's your life, but the way he put that, the moments you and I don't know if all of these things really happen, like you going to the bathroom and putting water on your face and just taking that deep breath before you get on the bus. Like, yes, you had a lot of hubris because you've done it a few times before. Right. So you weren't maybe nervous, maybe you were a little overconfident, so to speak.
Totally.
But at the same time, okay, the second you see the guards on the bus, those feelings do come. So maybe it's a few minutes off, right?
Things changed when I looked out the window. I was already home. I was already selling my hash. I was past customs. I was done. The fact that they kept us in a downstairs room for a little while, which is a little odd. And they put a bunch of us on a couple of buses to take us out to the plane because the PLO had just blown up a couple of jets out in the Jordanian desert, which started all this airport security. Prior to this, nobody got searched boarding a plane. You could have a chicken under your arm and jump on it at the last minute. Nobody bothered you. So they put us on a bus And they drove out and I had an old lady talking to me from Chicago, talking to me about her son, her grandson, who was stationed here in the Air Force, and blah, blah, blah, how much she liked Turkey. And I'm listening to her, and I'm already in my head, I'm already home. And the bus stops, and I look out the window, and there are Turkish soldiers surrounding the plane, and they've got a big yellow cord around it, and there's a big brown wooden table set up in front of the boarding ramp with 2 cops on each side, where apparently this is where they're going to be searching people, not at customs.
And you have
I thought they would.
You have rows of hash taped.
I've got hash under my arms. I got hash. I'm real skinny, so you didn't see it. I had hash around my waist. I had hash in my boots. I had hash all over my body. And here I am. There was nowhere to go. I dropped to the floor to get some time. I pretended I lost my passport. A cop came on and he said, "Women stay, men out, out, out." And all the men were getting up to move, and I'm on the floor thinking, "What am I going to do? How am I going to get out of here?" And I pretend I lost my passport, and the old lady looked over. She said, "Well, your passport is right there in your top pocket." It's like, thanks. And I'm out the door with this jumble of men from a couple of buses all funneling down towards this table, and there's nowhere to go, and I can't rip the shit off my body. I can't get back to the airport. All I can do is bluff my way onto the plane, and that's what I tried to do. And I kind of moved through the bunch of men, and I grabbed some stuff out of my I have a backpack on. I grabbed some stuff out of my backpack, and I was putting it back in as if I've already been searched, and I kind of sidle past the first cop, and I'm moving past the second cop, and I tell him he got me, meaning the first guy. And I'm pushing my my yoga book, Light on Yoga, which I had in my backpack. I'm putting it back in my backpack, telling him, yeah, the first guy searched me. And I get 1 foot up in the air towards the boarding ramp, and his hand grabs my elbow. I knew it. I mean, sound dramatic. I literally knew my life is hanging in the balance. And this guy pulled me over a little bit, and he said, "Raise your hands," which I did. And he starts to search me, and he hits these hard plaques under my arms. And he keeps going down towards my waist, and he hits the hard plaques taped around my waist, and he keeps going. I'm frozen there thinking, please, Jesus, get me out of here. I was a Catholic back in the day. Get me out of here. I'll never do this shit again. And he started to come back up, and as he came back, he hit the plaques under my arms, and he froze. And his eyes widened, and my heart really did stop. And then he freaked out and jumped back and pulled out his gun and dropped to one knee, screaming, "Baba, Baba!" And all the soldiers put their rifles down.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for me. They're looking for terrorists with plastic explosive. And this cop put his gun into my sweater, and his hand was shaking and shaking. And he lifted up my sweater, and it took him a moment to realize it's not wired with plastic explosive. It's just hash. It's a hash smuggler. He literally, the look on his face was, I could see the tension go out of his face. He pulled the gun from my stomach. It's hash. And he called out, "Hashish, hashish." And everybody was so relaxed and so happy. Oh, good, it's hashish. And they put the guns down, and all the people who were on the ground started to get up. And I'm frozen there, just waiting, because I knew my life has just totally changed.
So, you did one thing you did mention in reference to the character that the film did, portrayed you. You mentioned the biting of a tongue, right?
Right.
I think last time you were on the show, you actually said there was no Rifki. Was there a Rifki at all? And the whole tongue thing did that even happen at all?
No, actually, Rifki, I believe, I gotta remember, because there's a combination of character. I changed names from the real life to the book, and then we changed names from the book to the film, and so the names go by me. But Rifki was just a badass. He sold drugs in the jail, and they liked the idea of the informer getting his tongue bitten out. I didn't do that. That's Alan Parker and Oliver. Again, I don't. The fact that I didn't do it per se makes a little different, but I had violence in jail. People bothered me. I bothered them a whole lot more and hurt some people in ways that I'm ashamed of now. But you know what? You do what you got to do. Here, they've got me biting this tongue out, which I didn't do. Very effective scene. They got Brad spitting the tongue in the air and the blood. I don't have too many problems with the violence because prison was full of violence. If it wasn't that, it was something else. If it wasn't me per se, it was somebody else. So I didn't have a problem with that scene so much. It's the attitude that was in the movie vis-a-vis the entire country and Turks themselves. Again, I loved Istanbul. I had friends there. I had a Turkish girlfriend. I was there like for weeks on end when I was smuggling. And the attitude towards Turkey was so there were no good qualities any of the Turks in the movie. And later on, I heard Alan Parker say, "Well, we should have made like a World War II. You have to put at least one good German, so you don't condemn all of them." He said, "But I didn't want to do that. I did want to condemn them." He said, "For what they did to this kid and other people, I wanted to condemn them. But it's a little heavy-handed." And what he did was condemn the whole country and all the people in it. And everybody who saw that film hated Turkey and hated Turks. And to this day, unless they've heard me speaking about it or they visited, they still have that feeling. 50 years later, I've had people come and say, "Oh my God, we'll never go back there." Of course, I tell them what I just said to you. Go back, you'll love it. Don't get arrested. You won't like the jail. You'll love the hash, but I'd be careful with it back there. They had some really good hash in Turkey.
Well,
wait, Billy, I had
Yeah.
one thing that stuck in my mind was that cholera was spreading around in the prison, and then they want to give you the vaccine for it, but they're using the same needle on every single person.
I was in line. They had a cholera epidemic in Istanbul. I don't know. I was there a couple of months early on, and it was terrible. Of course, people were dying on the streets and stuff. And there was a riot in the prison because they weren't giving us any injections. So they finally came in and they lined everybody up and they made you get the injection. I was in line and I was behind the John Hurt character, who he's a junkie. He's shooting this shit in his arms all day long. So my choice now is, holy shit, either I get whatever, hepatitis from whatever he's got, or I get cholera. But one way or the other, this big needle, they just hit one guy and another guy and another guy. And they fill up. That doesn't happen now, but it freaked me out. Luckily, I didn't catch cholera. In fact, I didn't really catch much of anything. I'm, knock on wood, I'm really healthy, and I have Irish genes, and I don't have any hereditary things in the family, which was good, because if you get sick in jail, if you get weak, if you're weak, you pray, P-R-E-Y in jail. So you have to stay strong. You have to be not a target for people. And getting sick is not a good thing. But I kind of got through that cholera thing. And the only time I was truly desperately sick in jail was I had some teeth problems on the outside, and they got worse in jail. And one day I got a toothache that was so bad, and I'd had it all day, and then the next day, and the third day, this tooth was throbbing, and they have a dentist who comes in like once a week.
But no Novocaine.
No. This is an old Armenian dentist. So the Armenians and the Turks have a real bad relationship. And this old Armenian dentist would come in. And this guy, he had a cigarette hanging out of the corner. First off, he put you in a chair, and he had a drill that was connected to a cord. In Turkey, the power goes on and off, on and off. So he would put this power motor from the drill and hang it on a little hook above you, and then it connected to a foot pedal. So I'm in the chair watching this. He puts this thing up. My mouth is throbbing. He takes the drill and he checks it out by stepping on the foot pedal. You hear, it's like, what is happening here? And he came in and he tapped some teeth, and then he hit one, and I came up out of the chair. He said, "Oh yeah, that's the bad one." And then he actually did try and give me some kind of Novocaine stuff, whatever, but just eventually yanked this tooth. I could hear it cracking coming out of my mouth. Oh God. And then he put some cotton in, and he gave me some some kind of little pills that I took. And I went back to the cell block, and I kind of collapsed on my bed, and my mouth was bleeding. And after about an hour, that whatever he gave me started to wear off, and I felt the same fucking pounding in the tooth. I ran to the door. I made the guards let me get around to back over to where he was finishing up. He was putting all of his stuff. All the Turkish guards also made him work on their mouths when he would come to the jail. And I know he took a little bit of revenge with that needle on these Turkish guards, as much as he could get away with. But I ran back, he was there, and I said, no, no, no, the mouth is still. He said, all right, he took his stuff out and he sat me down in the chair. He said, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he just went and yanked this one out. Came out of me. He said, the other one was bad anyway. Don't worry about it. It's like, I hope so. I really hope it was. But that was the worst physical pain I had to deal with. And when I got back to the cell block, these guys said that those hops, those pills that he gave, they won't work. Try this. And they had a chunk of opium. So they gave me this opium and I ate it. It was terrible tasting, but I had such pain. And I ate this opium stuff and it started to make me feel not good, just really woozy. And then I was deathly sick. I mean, I vomited for hours and hours, and my head was throbbing. My tooth was bad. My whole body was bad. I finally collapsed and fell asleep, and I woke up the next morning. I felt terrible, but at least the throbbing toothache was gone and I could get on with my life. After that, I didn't really get sick much. Again, I do the yoga every day and I have healthy Irish genes, and I didn't get sick in jail, which was really good for me, because getting sick.
No. Billy, what are your feelings on Brittany Griner right now?
I actually did an interview with someone a week or so ago who she said, Ashley Bankford, a lovely lady who she said the first time she heard about Brittany Griner, the first thought she had was Midnight Express, Billy Hayes. So at 10 o'clock in the morning, I think last Wednesday, I get a phone call, and at 2 o'clock, I'm on the air talking to her about Brittany Griner and the situation. And I feel bad for this woman because of the situation that she's in. And anybody arrested for drugs, or cannabis especially, I feel bad. All drugs should be legal. It should be a medical problem, medical issue, not a legal one. But that's a whole nother subject. But she had this vape in her bag, and I'd seen her on TV, and I'd had a couple of images of her going by, and they said, so what would you say to her and her family if you had a chance? And the truth is, it doesn't matter what I say. I mean, I constantly over the year, when people get arrested, I hear from them. I get letters. The American Council said, can you write to this person because they're in trouble and give them some advice? And I'd write letters, but the truth is, I've been on the other side of it. It's nice to get letters from the outside, but it really doesn't help. It doesn't change anything. In fact, some ways you get a letter from the outside and you realize even more what you're missing and how bad things are when they start talking to you. But what I told them was, in prison, you have no control over anything except yourself. And yoga gives you tools to help control yourself. And I offered to them the same thing I offer to anybody, is do yoga in jail, because you can control things. Things happen. We decide what they mean and how they affect us or not. And I think she has, I know she has. I mean, she's an Olympic athlete. I mean, the woman, first off, she's 6'9". I don't know who's going to mess with her because she's an athlete, but I know that she has physical control. You have to be an athlete of that quality. So I know she has that. And watching her walk by in the videos that I could see, she seemed calm to me, considering the circumstance, but she seemed calm. She seemed in control and balanced to a degree. And I hope that's true. And she needs to keep that. She needs to hold that. Right now, she's become a political pawn. The fact that she had the vape, and cannabis is illegal in Russia, they could have gotten away with that, but she became a big name. And then because of the Ukrainian stuff going on, they're using her as a pawn. So I'm afraid that she's going to be caught back and forth, which she can't do anything about, except she can deal with herself. So my advice to her was, if you don't do yoga, you should. And what you need to do is stay calm and control yourself, because that's all you can do. And eventually this too shall pass. And I hope it's true. And I hope her family's hearing some of that. I feel bad for her. I mean, the idiocy of putting someone in prison for this crime. It's not a crime. It shouldn't be a crime. But she made a mistake. The truth is, I was a smuggler. I knew what I was doing. I deserved what I got. I didn't agree with the law, but I deserved having to deal with the, what's what I used to say at the college lectures, do what you like and know what you're doing. And knowing what you're doing means you take responsibility for your actions, because you have to live with the consequences. I never considered the consequences of my action. I made 3 smuggling trips incredibly dangerous. But I was young and I was riding high, and I knew I was way too smart and good looking to ever get arrested. I really believed that. That's how stupid I was. Like, and then when it happened, suddenly I was arrested, and my world collapsed, and I got thrown into the lockup the first night, and the next morning the American consul came out and started talking to me, and I'm thinking, yes, good, he'll help me, and all I want to do is somehow get out, get away from it. I didn't want my parents to have to find out about this. I didn't. And he talked to me for a while and told me what was going on. He gave me a list of Turkish lawyers to look at, a bunch of names I couldn't even pronounce, much less pick one. And then he left me alone in a little room with a pencil and a piece of paper to write a letter home to my parents. And that's when I had to face the reality of what I've done, which is I just put everybody who loves me in prison with me. I just put my mom in prison with me. And that's when I began to grow up a little. That's when I realized I was just so fucking selfish and stupid and running wild and smoking dope and getting laid and motorcycling around the world. And suddenly I've just fucked everybody I know. I put all my parents and my family in jail with me. And that was hard. That reality, to even face that reality. And now I have to face it. I could get away with it before. I could make excuses and think, well, I'll never get caught. Nobody. Now I have to face that. It's like my parents are in prison with me. And how do I deal with that?
How do you even tell them? And the you did mention I like it's I could see that in your mind, because I would think this, oh, the entire force and might of the United States is gonna come and rescue me.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
well, yeah, like you're naive, and it's naive thinking, but like you just think, oh, I'll just get in touch with the embassy, they'll get me right up.
The truth is, it was the United States government, as I mentioned, Richard Nixon, pressuring Turkey to increase penalties that caused this situation. They're not going to spend any capital bringing me out. If I was a senator's son, if there was some value to the U.S. doing it, Brittany has a value to the U.S. Yeah. Luckily for her, there's some coin there for her because she's well known. She's famous. I think all the publicity that we can do for her, it's why I did that show and mentioned the world is watching. I don't think Russia can get away with messing with her in a way that's too obvious. I don't think she's going to have to deal with physical abuse. One, because people know her. Two, again, I wouldn't mess with her. She's a 6'9" athlete. You got to be real stupid to mess with her. But that's kind of a little jokey. We shouldn't be joking on this other side. I think she's going to be all right. I hope she can keep herself calm and maybe use the time in a way, and her family can at least see an exit from this. If they give her 6 months suspended or have to spend she's been there 5 months now. That's a long time. You get locked up overnight when you're driving in US somewhere and spend a night in a lockup, you realize, holy shit, this is bad. I don't ever want to do this again. 5 months, you know what it's like. You know what life is going to be like if you have to stay here. And she's facing that now. So I think she needs to take care of herself and emotionally help herself be strong so that her parents can see she's okay. She's not falling apart. And that might make them feel a little bit better about her being brought home free. If politics, and that's a tricky thing because you don't know who's doing what or why they're doing it. But if the politics work out and she's brought home, that would be a good lesson for her and for everybody else who, guys, it's a big world out there. The fact that cannabis is legal here in most places, I used to do college lectures and invariably I'd say, okay, so who out there thinks that this is a crazy thing to get arrested for cannabis? And kids would raise their hand. And I say, if you have a joint behind your ear here in this state where we're doing the lecture, it's legal. You cross the border into the next state, there's a geographical distinction of legality. It's like 3 years of your life to cross that border with a joint. So wake up. Yeah. Just because you're unaware of it doesn't mean it's not there, as I was. Suddenly it was in my face and it was too late for me. It's not too late for you.
And most of those people who rail against it will go home and drink 5 glasses of wine and get in a car and all the other. all the other hypocrisy
Right.
that go.
Well,
But that's
you
a
get,
whole.
us, you get us into a drug discussion. I mean, the worst drug is cigarettes. It kills you. It says so on the box. The biggest problem in the United States still today is alcohol among young kids, right? And older people too. Alcohol is a killer. Cannabis, you can overdose anything. You can drink too much milk and it'll be bad for you. But a glass of milk's not going to hurt you. A couple of beers when you come home from work or you're at a baseball game, it's not going to hurt you. If you have to drink a 6-pack before you go to school, you got a problem.
Very true. But Billy, you've always been just an incredible storyteller, and that is reflected again in this book. And while we're promoting this book specifically, look at all of Billy's books because they're all fantastic in their own way. He mentioned Letters, which I read Letters cover to cover as well, and just it was so great to see how in those letters you wrote you put codes in them and things like that. So you
writing to my dad,
and all of those different things. But you can we'll put under this video all of the links to pick up this book and others in Amazon. Follow Billy. He's on Facebook. He's in social media. And I can't thank you enough, Billy, for joining us. It's always a pleasure. You're welcome back anytime at all.
Thank you, Rob. Lori, nice to meet you. And I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk this talk again and to promote the new book, etc. And anytime, I would love to come back.
Thank you for watching The Whole. I am Rob Sprance.
I'm Lori Levine. I have to pee really bad.
Okay. Later, motherfuckers.
Bye.
All right.